I thought it would be interesting to follow the course of a Roman aqueduct from its source into the city. There were a total of 11 aqueducts built to supply ancient Rome. The first of those was the Aqua Appia, built in about 311 BC. The next was the Anio Vetus, and the third was the Aqua Marcia. So I thought that it'd be fun to follow the Aqua Marcia because it's the longest. It has a lot left that you can easily see if you are visiting Rome, and the spring is still the source of water, or one of the sources of water, for the current city of Rome. So as you can see here is a map of the Aqua Marcia. It has a total length of 56 miles and delivered about 50 million gallons a day, which seems like an amazingly high amount of water, but that's a lot of water. Anyway, it was built between 144 BC and 140 BC by Quintus Marcius Rex, using funds taken from the defeat of Carthage and Corinth in the previous year. The source is a group of springs 23 miles from Rome, just south of the town of Agosta. The hills have moved a little bit, some subsidence and other things, so the exact location of the spring is not very well known, but it's somewhere along the hillside here. It spends a lot of time underground because it was built in the early Republic when there was a lot of warfare, and it was thought that it would be safer from attack underground. But it pops out in a few places across valleys and streams, and that's where it gets really interesting for us surface dwellers. So as I said, it's mostly underground. It's a gravity-driven system. Water can't go uphill, so there has to be a slope, but not too much slope, or the water would erode the channels. So according to Vitruvius, the only surviving author of architecture from his time, the Romans stuck to about 1 foot drop for every 4,800 feet traveled. So in order to keep the gradient, sometimes they didn't stick to the shortest path. Just for context on vocabulary, we have this really wonderful graphic by Roger Classen. If the aqueduct needs to be elevated, if it's crossing over, for example, a river or a valley, it's on what's called a bridge. That's pretty simple. Over long stretches of flat country, it would be on an arcade. And then much less frequently, if a bridge or arcade wasn't practical, then it could be a siphon. So basically, that's a long stretch of pipe. These were prone to leaks and had an immense amount of pressure if the drop was really large. And generally, these were made out of lead. And according to Vitruvius, it was actually known by the Romans that lead was unhealthy and made the water taste bad. Then, at the very end was a distribution station that had at least 3 connections that prioritized water. So first it went to basins and water fountains for public consumption, then to baths, and then third, if there was anything left, it would go to the private houses of the rich and famous. He makes it very clear that the rich had to pay taxes to have it in their homes, but he also suggested that there was income from the baths. So maybe the baths weren't as free as you sometimes read in some of your textbooks. Anyway, let's get back to the map. The Aqua Marcia runs underground for a while, and the first above-ground remains are at the Pont degli Archi, where it emerges on an arcade that turns into a bridge over the river, at least the remains of a bridge on the other side. The Aqua Anio Vetus follows it for long stretches, and you can see it on the other side of the aqueduct bridge. Funny sometimes how images on Google Maps are some of the best you can find. I guess this isn't a very popular tourist attraction. Next, they both go into this hillside through tunnels. The Aqua Marcia then crosses the next valley on the Pont San Pietro, which is located right here, and it's pretty well disguised by the trees, but there's a trail if you want to take a hike. Then up the valley, the Anio Vetus pops out on the Pont della Mola, which is much larger and in much better condition if you want to hike it. Next, according to numerous sources, the Aqua Marcia pops out of the hill much further north on the Pont Lupo. It's pretty far north. That kind of surprises me. But anyway, it's a pretty well-preserved bridge, which is more of a wall with passages below for water, I guess, from the river. And it's pretty well touristed, and you can see some videos online by folks who are exploring it. Then it goes back underground and crosses 2 valleys with bridges. The Pont Capoli, which the remains here show a double arch, and then the Pont del Bullica with just a single arch. Then it goes underground again, or at least there are no remains to be seen, until it gets to the southeast end of Rome, where it pops out in the Aqueduct Park, which you can definitely visit. It's actually combined with the Aqua Felice, which is more modern, 1586, if you can call that modern, but that's still operating 500 years later, so that's pretty impressive. And then behind it is the Aqua Claudia and several other aqueducts in the park. A bit further up is the first cistern from the Aqua Marcia, at least in the city, and I think it was more for settling out junk than anything else. Then it proceeds almost into the city as it meets and tracks the Aurelian Wall. Here, it's on top of the Porta Furba with the remains of the Aurelian Wall behind it. And you can just keep following it up. It's fairly well preserved due to the Aqua Felice that is basically using some of its components. It crosses the train tracks. I wonder what was here before. Maybe a stream, I don't know, or a road. And then it crosses some older railroad tracks. Then it crosses the Porta Maggiore, which is really interesting. Besides having the tomb of Aristocles the baker, definitely worth visiting if you have a chance, the Porta Maggiore actually is the crossing point for 3 separate aqueducts. So as you can see here, the Marcia is on the bottom, the Tupula is in the middle, and the Julia is on top. When you think about aqueducts only having about 1 foot drop per every 4,800 feet, the fact that they could engineer a gate with 3 stacked aqueducts is really impressive. After the Porta Maggiore, the wall and the Marcia don't exist with the railroad tracks. I don't want to assume that they were knocked down, but I suspect they were. They start up again briefly on the other side, but I'm not exactly sure what's what over there. Then the distribution basin was further up at Via 20 September. Well, if you followed along this far, I hope you enjoyed this little trip along the Aqua Marcia. Let me know in the comments if there's something I got wrong or something I got right. I learned a lot putting it together and had some fun doing it. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments. You can like, you can subscribe, you know the drill. Anyway, and you should see a link on the screen to another video that YouTube thinks that you would like to see. So give it a click and I'll see you around soon.